Lehrhaus Judaica, in partnership with the Osher Marin JCC, presented a half-day conference in March 2013 entitled Free-Ranging Communities, Jewish Life in Marin and Hollywood. Part of the day focused on the diversity that makes Marin County, California special to 7 different voices from our community. In this segment, you'll meet Marlene Saritzky, who shares her story of how her life has fluctuated in and out of Judaism, with stops at camp, un-affiliation, and back again.
Good afternoon. I brought a prop with me. It's a chicken. He's going to help me tell a story. But actually what I want to talk to you about today is wrestling, and my own wrestling with God. In 1944, during the war, my mother was 14 in Detroit, and it was 2 days before Yom Kippur. Her father, an Orthodox Jew, was performing an old Jewish ritual called kaparot. No one else was in the house, not her mother or her brothers and sisters. In this ritual, the man of the house waves a live chicken over the head of the youngest child 3 times and recites a blessing. The idea is that the man's sins are transferred to the chicken, and afterwards, not surprisingly, the chicken is slaughtered and given to the poor for a meal. So this is taking place, and suddenly in the middle of the ritual, her father says that he didn't feel well and tries to hand the live chicken to my mother. And then he collapsed to the floor. With a chicken running loose through the house, my mother ran to a neighbor to try to get help, but it was during the war, and it wasn't like you could just call 911. Hours later, her mother came home to find her husband very ill and quite distraught. And 2 days later, on Yom Kippur, he passed away. As you might imagine, this incident had a profound effect on my mother and her relationship to her faith, and subsequently, a profound influence on mine. My mother told me this story for the first time around the time of my becoming bat mitzvah. I had already begun to doubt and question so much of what I had learned in Sunday school and Hebrew school, which, apologies to my teachers then and now, I hated. I struggled greatly during that time. My bat mitzvah didn't mean what I wanted it to mean. Frankly, I didn't even understand what it was supposed to mean. But I'd had years of Bible stories and holidays, Shabbat services that seemed exactly the same every time, tiny little plastic cups of grape juice and sitting for hours in services at the high holidays. And worst of all, getting up early on a Sunday morning. So as you can see, I began wrestling with God at a very early age. But it's a path that would take many twists and turns in my life. Soon after my bat mitzvah, I went to Camp Swig, and there, everything changed. Oh, Judaism was alive there. It could be an emotional experience so that I could relate to the learning, to the texts, to the rituals. It's where I learned about deep and long-lasting friendships. It was 500 kids on Shabbat, on a lawn, dressed in white, singing together, surrounded by redwood trees as the sun went down. Camp was full of storytellers and artists like Peretz Pursan, who still inspires me today. There were kids from around the country, different kinds of Jews. We built things together. We talked about the uncomfortable stuff, about our own doubts about our Judaism. And out from under the watchful eye of our parents, we were able to take some deeper emotional risks. It was pretty deep. And yes, I still wrestled there. But there I learned that wrestling with God was a good thing. Who knew? It's to be encouraged. It can be about questioning and moving in and out and about changing your views and shifting perspectives. But you can still be welcome in any synagogue, at any Shabbat table, pretty much anywhere in the world. So Camp Swig was the most meaningful experience of my adolescence, absolutely. It was perhaps the only time I felt I had the choice to be Jewish, even though I wasn't always sure how to be Jewish. The relationships I built there were and still are lifelong. It's where I learned the true meaning of tikkun olam, of compassion, of love and community, and I went back for many, many years. This is not to say that my family or my synagogue had failed me previously. It's just to say that stepping out of one's Jewish comfort zone is, I think, really, really important. At least it was for me. After many years at Swig, I went off to UC Berkeley, and poof, all desire to express my Jewishness in any outward way just disappeared, and I'm not even sure I know why. I still hung out with my camp friends, but that was it, and I'm still really not sure why I walked away. Then I graduated, I worked in politics, I moved to Washington, D.C. for a few years, and then back to L.A. where I was raised. I spent Pesach and high holidays with my family, but truth be told, I think that was really for my mother and not for me. And then I moved to Austin, Texas. Talk about the diaspora. But there I met an extraordinary rabbi, Kerry Baker, and he and some people were starting a new synagogue, which we called post-denominational. I didn't know a soul in the group, but I decided to dive in and try to play a part in building this community of Jews who could wrestle with God together in safety. It was very messy, but we pulled it off, and that congregation still thrives. Soon after, for a number of reasons, I decided to move back to the Bay Area. I did a lot of shul shopping when I got here, but I didn't find what I thought I was looking for. So I left my Judaism behind, again. And then a few days before Rosh Hashanah, 3 years ago, my friend Jamie Doobie told me he heard there was a service at the Mill Valley Community Center led by one of the rabbis at Rodef Shalom, Noah Kushner. She had opened a door to Rodef members and those who were not tied to a specific synagogue and challenged us to create something a bit different, something that spoke to us in these times, something that was about our Jewishness being a way of life and not only a construct of what we believed. It was called NITA. This was really what I'd been looking for, I guess, and I was all in once again. And I really deeply admired Rodef Shalom for taking a risk on something like this. So the idea of NITA was so compelling and so inspiring that some really, really smart people from San Francisco came to Rabbi Noah and lured her there to start something similar, which she calls the kitchen, which thrives today. It's sort of like NITA, but frankly, it's even better. But I thought I had finally found what I was looking for, and now it was gone. Granted, it was just on the other side of the Golden Gate Bridge, but I was in Marin, and I wanted to have a local Jewish community. So what's ironic is that I then ended up very close to where I started as a child, which was part of a more traditional Reform synagogue, right next door at Rodef Shalom. Crazy, I know. But here's the amazing thing. I had indeed brought all the parts of my past with me. And yet, in that more traditional settings, I found rabbis and educators and congregants who care about our collective character as much as they care about whether or not we correctly recite the prayers. It's a community that welcomes all sizes, origins, views, and even families where not everyone is Jewish. I joined our Chevra Kadisha, where we visit the sick and feed the hungry and perform the rituals of Tahara and Shmirah. Talk about wrestling. So what does this journey mean? I guess it means that the greatest gift of my Jewish life is that encouragement to truly wrestle, to question and even twist in the wind a little bit when it comes to finding your own personal place. It turns out that this wrestling, this conflict, this separation has been the greatest connection for me in the end. And by the way, our 9-year-old son doesn't like Sunday school at all, but he is going to camp this summer, so we'll see how that turns out. So wrestle on. Thank you.